Bonus time, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for a bonus track on the Polymuse podcast. When they drop a bonus track, we drop you a bonus episode.
Heck
System of
yeah.
a Down has a weird little secret track, bonus track on the Toxicity album. If you wait long enough, it's got the hidden track. Remember when there were hidden tracks on CDs?
Oh, yeah.
You just wait and there's silence. And then if you forget to turn your CD player off,
Something else starts.
usually something weird.
Yeah.
Like some weird extra hidden little nugget, sound collage or something.
Yeah.
The Beatles actually did the first ever hidden track on the Sgt. Pepper vinyl.
Oh, really?
On vinyl records, there's a runoff groove, which is the groove that has the music in it, and then the needle moves to what's called the runoff groove, so that when it reaches there, the machine just picks the needle back up. Or it'll stay in the runoff groove and just run out forever with silence. If you have an old turntable, it'll just stay there spinning. So they had to have a groove on the record for the needle to stay in.
Yeah.
The Beatles said, why can't we put music on the runoff groove?
Right.
So at the very end of the album, after the silence, after the everything, when the needle goes all the way to the center of the album, there's just a little space for the needle to live. On the Sgt. Pepper album, they actually recorded music in there.
That's
so if
crazy.
you wait long enough after the album is over and you don't have a modern turntable that will pick the arm back up itself, and you have an old-fashioned turntable where the arm will stay and into the runoff groove, it plays this crazy sound collage that's creepy and weird and definitely would have freaked people out at the time. Continues to freak people out to this day who don't know that it's there. It is on the Sgt. Pepper CD after like a certain amount of silence, but they invented the secret bonus track.
That's
We've
crazy.
got Arto as well in the CD era. There's no runoff groove, but there is certainly, you just basically, if your album is 60 minutes long, then you just put 20 minutes of silence,
Yep.
and then the final little couple weird seconds. Another famous one is on Weird Al's album. I can't remember which one it was. It's the one where it's Off the Deep End, where he's making fun of Nirvana. They have a secret track, and it's horrifying. It's like him screaming and power tool noises, and that one actually got me.
Yeah.
I was aware of secret tracks because I had Green Day by Dookie had a secret track all by myself. So I was aware of a bunch of little secret tracks, but the Weird Al one actually scared the crap out of me. I
Yeah.
left the CD on, came and went from the room, whatever, like left the CD player on, and it just starts like screaming and like making power tool noise. I'm like,
Oh
no
my
way,
gosh.
what is it? So that's on there. I don't
Yeah.
think that made it to the Spotify edition of Off the Deep End. I think
Probably
that actually
not.
got cut. But what did make it to the Spotify version of the album, the secret track Arto by System of a Down. This is a very, very cool song, very cool secret track. It shows kind of a totally different side to the musicianship of these guys. It has a featured musician, Arto Tunçboyacıyan.
That sounds good. Sounds
My
like a
best-
good pronunciation.
Best guess on his last name. He's an Armenian jazz multi-instrumentalist who they featured on this song as well as another song coming up on the next album. But there's all kinds of, I don't even know what all the instruments are in here, and they're not credited on the actual
No, they aren't.
album information. So we've got quite a few. It sounds like several types of flute, several types of percussion instrument, very otherworldly sounding. Serge has another album called Ser Art, which is very similar to this type of music. It is very not System of a Down-y in their metal stuff, but it's System of a Down-y from this type of stuff. And this is just cool. It's chanty and weird, and it rolls along and just it's a different texture, but it's a texture that they pull from on the other stuff. It's like this is the super concentrated version of the flavor.
Yep.
And they take that flavor and they put it into their mixed beverages, which are the other songs. But then the very final track is like, here's all the leftover, like here's the rest of the flavor.
Exactly.
All compacted together, not, distributed along with the mixer. So it's just that
Exactly.
full dose of what's been influencing them the whole time. And they got this guy Arto. It sounds amazing. It just sounds authentic. It sounds perfect. It's a great like closer to the album in a great way. Like if people don't know what Armenian music is at all, they just have this little slice on there. It shows like, hey, this is where we're coming from. Do you love Arto as much as me?
It's okay. I'm not particularly moved by it, actually. It's too far from System of a Down for me personally, and it's very much, and like we said, kind of Armenian, folksy, more in that direction. And System of a Down, to me, is adding elements of that to their crashing noise and the elements of metal or new metal or whatever wave they kind of created and cultivated for themselves from different elements. And this is just all the way in that one direction. This is when you have the needle in the middle and you flip it all the way in one direction. And you're like, well, this is not what I listened to because I didn't have it all the way over here. So to me, this is not, I don't care about this song. In the context of System of a Down's discography, I don't care about this song.
I think it's cool. I'll give it an A-. I think it deserves to exist. I think it would not make my mixtape, obviously, but it would make kind of that next round down for me, where if you were, a deeper fan, make sure you know this one. Make sure you're up on your knowledge on the type of music these guys are really pulling from. You got a grade for this?
I do. I appreciate that it's there, but I give it a D. It doesn't need to be here. It's fine as a bonus track, because that's where it should be.
Yeah,
but I'm not listening to it. And I would put it on other lists, maybe folk stuff or other stuff where it's appropriate, but I wouldn't even be on System of a Down stuff for me at all.
Definitely check out that other band. I looked it up. It's Ser Art. It's Surge is the air and Arto is the art, and it's this kind of music. So maybe put it on your Ser Art playlist.
Yes, exactly.
Do that podcast and then rank it against those songs. See how you do. I think it's cool. I like it when bands do like a weird little extra thing. I think there's just so many albums that end that way. Again, there's another Beatles album, the Abbey Road album. They do this huge suite like piece of music. All these little pieces come together, and then there's silence. And then there's just this weird little folk song at the end that comes in as a secret track. The Use Your Illusion album by Guns N' Roses, there's like 30 songs of like metal and rock and hard rock. And then there's just one song at the end that's like industrial techno. It sounds nothing like, it's like hour after hour after hour of a 2-disc album of every Guns N' Roses song you've ever heard. And then just the final weird little bonus track is something that has nothing to do with it. It's just a totally different type of music, a totally different atmosphere. So to me, that's just how you end the album. Like you just put a weird, just something totally, just go record the radio or something and play it backwards and put that at the end of your album. That would make more sense to me than writing an ending. Just put something weird, just leave you being like, what? Like on to the next. There are very many albums that take that approach where you do your finale, which is Aerials. You do your big final round of applause. And that's like, oh, here's a little weird little thing for you on your way out. I appreciate that. I think
it's a interesting little treat, but it's just not something that I'm throwing on other
treats for you.
Playlists. And it's especially different in streaming times when you can just skip it. Of course, that's not what we're looking at here. We're looking at a mixtape CD for Polymuse, and it was fun back in the day. Or if you're still rolling through CDs as we occasionally are, flipping CDs on, it's fun to kind of hit that bonus track at the end.
It shows how much different styles of art these guys are involved in. Here might be a good point to just drop quickly the fact that Serge is also a published poet. He has several books of poetry that are published. He performs all kinds of different music, jazz music, orchestral music, electronic music, folk music. It's just insane how many different types of art these guys are capable of. Like a lot of guys just kind of stay in one pocket, but they're just so interested in every different form of art that it makes sense that they'd have these little nuggets along the way of something totally different for you.
So to recap here, Ben's S-tier list at the end of the first 2 albums here through Toxicity and some of our bonus tracks and projects. Ben has Sugar, Suggestions, War, Snowblind, Shame, The Metro, Prison Song, Chop Suey, Bounce, Forest, and Toxicity. Currently on his S-tier all-time mixtape.
So I'm running out. We only have 14 total. I think I have 3 left to give.
Yep.
And we've got a lot left to hear, so we'll see how that shakes out.
Yep, I'm currently sitting on Sweet Pea, Sugar, Prison Song, Chop Suey, Deer Dance, Toxicity, and Science.
So how many do you have left to dole out?
Currently, I have half the album left.
Nice.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a lot coming up from Steal This Album, aren't we? Or not. Apparently not. Apparently a lot from not our favorite album. What is coming up next on the Polymuse podcast? We are going to do Steal This Album by System of a Down. Steal this podcast. I don't care. I don't know how you would do so, how you would do such a thing. It's free, right? If you're paying for this podcast, stop.
Just to recap, Toxicity here again peaked at number 1 on Billboard's top 200 charts, is viewed as one of the top albums of the decade. System of a Down's impact and their different styles here made a big impact across multiple genres and was a splash here, especially in the 2000s. Just a massive record. Toxicity ranked as the number 2 album of the decade by multiple artists in the same realm there. Aerials, Toxicity, Chop Suey, and multiple other songs making big waves. So Toxicity, just a big hit.
It's classic, dude. I mean, possibly even all of their albums are classic. They all are so unique from what was going on at the time. The album art is classic. You've got multiple like household name top singles in there. Anyone who was around at the time knew about Chop Suey. It was just, it stands alone. It stands apart from the other stuff of the era. It stands apart nowadays. I think you put this as a classic rock album against anything. This is classic rock of the 2000s. You put it with classic rock of the 70s, 80s, 90s. What do you want to hear? This is System of a Down. It's a classic example. People think, there's so many people who think rock died along the way, and maybe it did, and maybe it was before this or after this, but this is a classic rock album.
Absolutely. It has a fun story when we tackle Steal This Album next and the storyline with that. So we'll certainly tackle that next on the Polymuse podcast.
All right, sit tight.